Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Kyra, and here on this channel, we love our makeup. And also, I am a recovering beauty guru. What does that mean, you ask? Well, for the last 6 years that I've been doing beauty content on social media, I pretty much bought everything that I wanted. And now I am reining myself in, using what I have, loving what I have, and tracking what I have. But most importantly, I'm changing my mindset about always wanting more. And it's going pretty well actually this year. So let me know down below if you'd like to see kind of an update on my mindset and maybe my fantasy self. But today's video is all about those beautiful shiny pans that we love to see in the panning community and just in general. I love seeing my makeup get use on it. So today is a second part to makeup I have pan on. The first video will be linked down below, and it is all of the makeup, the regular makeup, cheeks, etc. that I have pan on, and this video is all about the palettes. I had 12 products that had pan on them, and I have 12 palettes with pan on them, and I'm going to share them all with you right now. So I will have some juicy B-roll footage with these pans up close, but I'm also going to share with you about the pans and how I got there. So let's start with a little bitty palette, or a bite-sized palette if you will, and it comes from e.l.f. It is the Pumpkin Pie Quad, and I have ginormous pan on the bronze shade in here. The reason being, this is my favorite bronze in my collection, and also my sweet daughter, when she was very young and had very little money of her own, chose this and purchased this for me herself. So I love this little pan, and I love this little palette, and this bronze shade is absolutely insane. It looks like liquid metal. It's just the right tone for my skin tone to give that kind of brown, metallic, smoky eye look. Let's talk about some of my oldest palettes and the pans that I have in them, starting with my very first high-end eyeshadow palette, and that was my Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. Yes, this is the original one, and no, my eyeballs are not falling off. I had this in No Pan Left Behind already this year and have used it in its entirety, but I do have pan in the beautiful shade called Luscious. And again, it's because it's a shade that I love so much. I'm not going to swatch from every palette, but I just have to show you a couple of my favorite shades. Luscious is absolutely a stunning lid shade. In fact, I know Jessica Braun in the last year or so had repurchased the Sweet Peach palette, so just for that shade, and with good reason in my opinion, because it is stunning. It is my perfect lid shade. And if you hear any snoring or bells or anything during today's video, it is because both of the boys are with me, our golden retriever Oliver and my beautiful black cat named Cooper. Speaking of old palettes, this is the Lorac Mega Pro 2, and I don't remember which year, but I did use this as my pan that palette one year, and the goal was to hit as many pans in this palette as I could. I did sadly only hit 6 pans in this palette, but I really enjoyed the year working with this. I had not decluttered, I had put this in my archive of sentimental makeup. I don't know why I'm sentimental about this one, but I just love this palette and just really couldn't part with it. There are shades in here that are just absolutely favorites, including this one right here called Olivine. Let's swatch it. Let's see if she's still as beautiful as before. And she is. It's such a beautiful sort of green, taupe, silver kind of shade, and I absolutely love it. It's part of the reason I've kept this palette, just in case I ever want that shade. But I do love this palette. I love the formulas in it, and I am glad to have 6 pans in here. And I'm excited at whatever point that this gets rolled into No Pan Left Behind, so I can use it again in its entirety. And the last super old palette, I can't remember if I did have this as a pan matte palette one year. I believe I did, and I thought, well, this would be easy. It's all the mattes I could ever want. And I do have 3 pans in here. One of them is a little harder to see in this shade right here, which is Dunes. I did hit pan on that one by way of using it in my eyebrows. And then I, of course, have a pan in one of the lid setting shades. And then in this one, which is my favorite transition shade in the palette, called Journey. I do love this palette. It does still smell like chocolate or vanilla or baked goods. The one shade I probably don't get very much use out of is this dark face shade here. And I don't count this in my bronzer inventory. I count it as a part of an eyeshadow because this will never work on my face. It is just way too dark. But I do love these 2 bronzers, and I don't know. I love this palette in general. All right, let's talk about a palette with pan I didn't hit. And that is my Natasha Denona My Dream palette. I did receive this in PR, so I didn't ever report that it kind of came broken, but there is a pan in here nonetheless. I just didn't hit it, and it's in this black shade. It came broken. So, I mean, because it came in PR, I was going to be like, hey, mine's broken. Can you send me another one? I don't use black eyeshadow that often anyway, so there's still plenty of product left. But there is a pan in there nonetheless, whether I hit it or not. Another former pan matte palette is my Persona Identity palette. This is the original packaging, which tells you how long I've had it. And the only pan that I hit in this palette was on the shade Seductive, which is beautiful. And this green Bombshell is very, very similar to the shade I swatched for you from the Lorac Mega Pro in the shade Olivine. This is the shade Bombshell. It's a very similar greeny taupe kind of shade, which I love. And I love this palette. It is so old. The mattes are starting to not perform quite as well. The shimmers are still perfection. If I came across a new one of these for free, I'd be a happy, happy girl. ABH Soft Glam palette. I do have 2 pans in here. I have pan in this shade, which is Tempura, and I have pan in the shade Rose Pink. I think I was attempting to hit 3 pans in here. I can't remember, but I love this palette. It's a beautiful warm tone color story for me. It's very spring, summer adjacent, and I just love the shades in here. I love the shade Orange Soda. I'm surprised I haven't hit pan on that one, but I am really glad to still have that in my collection. And then one year I decided, instead of doing a pan matte palette, that I would try to hit 3 pans in a palette and then roll it out and then roll something else in. And this was one of the palettes that I did hit my goal on. I have 3 pans in my ABH Norvina palette. I have it in Dreamer, Base, and Dazzling, which is a beautiful shade. I currently have this in my No Pan Left Behind, so I'm excited to play with it again more. Maybe even hit a pan in here before it rolls out. You never know, but it's a gorgeous palette. I just love this color story. I know some people didn't, but for me and my bohemian kind of self, this is perfect. At the beginning of this year, I again wanted to hit pan in an eyeshadow in a palette and then roll it out and roll something else in. I was making the choices myself. The only one that I did that with is the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes palette, and I did hit pan on my favorite transition shade from this palette. I definitely have dips in other shades, but this is a favorite palette for me, 100%. I absolutely love this. I used the absolute snot out of it in 2023, and I'm still loving it today. And then the last 3 are all palettes that I've hit pan on in projects this year, starting with my ABH Sultry palette. And so for those keeping track at home, I have one ABH palette left that doesn't have pan in it, and it is my Carly Bible palette, and it recently got rolled into Project Level Up, so we'll have some pans in there soon. But ABH Sultry, and I hit this pan completely organically. It's a teeny tiny pinprick pan in the shade Twig, but I do really love Twig as a transition shade. I love a good taupey shadow, even though I have warm undertones. So I did actually organically hit pan in this when it was in my No Pan Left Behind project this year. Same with my Danessa Myricks Defining Neutrals Groundwork palette. No, Groundwork Defining Neutrals palette. And I did hit pan on the shade called Chiseled in the pomade formula. These pans are not deep, number one. And number two, since it was a cream and I was using it on my face quite a bit, it was pretty easy to hit pan on. I love the scent, this like fruity scent of this palette. If you want a pan or a palette that is easy to hit pan on, I definitely think this one is pretty easy in terms of the pomade formula, not as much with the powder formula. I couldn't speak to that. And then lastly, the palette that I hit pan on, and this is kind of a spoiler, so if you don't want to spoil my Project Level Up, then, you know, I'll see you in the next video. But if you don't mind a little spoiler, my Pretty Grunge palette from Huda Beauty was rolled in for my level 1 for Project Level Up. And so I had to use every shade once and hit one pan. This is going to be the pan that's hardest to see. It's in this shade called Maverick right here. And surprisingly, it didn't take me that long to hit pan. I want to say like 10 uses. I don't know. I can look. Let me see. Yeah, exactly 10 uses. I hit pan in this. But this is a very flaky shade. When you're picking up product, you know, there's a lot of flaking happening. So I think that's why I was able to hit pan in such a low number of uses. But I'm excited. This is one of my newest palettes, and now it has pan in it. And that, my friends, are all 12 of my palettes that currently have pan in them. I'm really excited to help this collection of palettes with pan in them to grow this year through projects like No Pan Left Behind and Project Level Up. Of course, it's not the point to hit pan in No Pan Left Behind, but I have twice organically. So I could see that happening again, and I'm excited about Project Level Up. I'm very excited to be working on the Carly Bible palette and that she will join this little friend group pretty soon. Speaking of friends, I've been listening to Matthew Perry's book, and it's an audio book, and it's read by him, and it's just so heart-wrenching to hear him tell his story. If you haven't read it and you were a huge Friends person like I was in the 90s and 2000s, it's definitely worth the read. I really recommend the audiobook because he reads it himself, and it just gives such a different, it's so different than if you would read it in your own voice in your head, I think, personally. But I digress, and we don't usually talk about books here, but let me know if you want to know about all the books that I've read so far this year. I'm back to reading, which is really healthy for me and my mental health. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Here's to many, many more pans in the future for both you and me. And I hope all of your makeup days are absolutely beautiful makeup days. And I will see you in my next video very, very soon. Bye.